AATBirds Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need.
Quick, he's going to go. What a give it to Smith, and they stop him again. Go back. He looks, fires for the end zone, intercepted, the 20, the 10, the 5, touchdown, not where, midfield, he's at the 40, he's going to go, Deshaun Jackson, he steps up his head and falls forward, and he fumbles the football, and the Eagles have it, it's gone, and the Eagles win.
It's all birds, all the time.
How about them Eagles?
How about them Eagles? What's going on, everybody? It is the weekly report, the first one of the offseason here on the AATBirds, AAT Sports Network. I am Chip at Chip for the Birds and Umpire Stories, which is, probably close to what we're doing now since baseball season is right around the corner. Neato. Joined, as always, by Johnny U at Johnny U9322 and Kendall Beck, K Beck Eagles. Guys, what is going on? Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
We did it. We made it to Wednesday.
Yeah, it's tough. We'll be diving into the game and everything. As you can tell, I'm still a little bit under the weather, sick. Hopefully getting on the upward swing. But no, it was tough. We'll get into it and talk a little bit about it, our reactions and everything. I think some of us may have some different opinions, but going to get into that. Going to also talk about losing the coordinators. Because, hey, the offseason is officially underway, and there is a lot of stuff to go on because free agency is exactly 1 month away. So that's a short amount of time, and so we got a lot of stuff going on here. So
I mean, look, we have to do it. I mean, it's our first show since the Super Bowl. We have to do a bit of a Super Bowl recap. I don't know how much, we're going to really harp on it. It's kind of gotten beaten to death at this point. I'll tell you my initial takeaways. The Eagles lost that game, and much different than like the 49ers and the Cowboys and all those guys. We've kind of taken our losses. We've taken our loss, I think, a little better. But with that being said, I do feel that there's a lot of room to talk about, hey, this doesn't sit right. And we can talk about things like, the face mask on the fumble. We could talk about the Devontae Smith overturn call. We could talk about how the Chiefs got to challenge a call after the penalty was thrown on a next play. I mean, we could talk about the fact that Jonathan Gannon's defense couldn't stop anybody in the second half because he didn't make adjustments. So, of course, Andy Reid finally wins the Super Bowl with the Eagles involved after making second half adjustments. My God, it just happened to be at our expense. We could talk about the fact of after the game, you have to start to question some of the script stuff when Roger Goodell has that kind of reaction with a Chiefs player. And we're going to get into that. But I think for me, the biggest thing that I have an issue with, look, we all know that it was defensive holding. There's no question about that. And I think our players have been really good about saying, yeah, one play doesn't make a Super Bowl. We're not even going to talk about the field, which, was horrific. But for them to throw that flag with 2 minutes left in the game, in a one-score game, when they hadn't called that all game is very, very questionable. And it ended a legendary Super Bowl. It ended a legendary Super Bowl with the refs getting to make the final decision. And that just can't happen. When you have a officiating pandemic, which we do, because everything is heavily scrutinized, and Roger Goodell's coming out and saying the officiating is the best it has been ever, for it to end that way, you can clearly see that you have a problem, which goes into the fact of you have instant replay. You've got 6 trillion cameras looking at every single play. You've got to get the call right. And if you're going to make that call with 2 minutes remaining of the game, you had to have called it all game. if it's even remotely questionable, you cannot throw that flag.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parameters when you look at the game, and one call doesn't, make or break the game because there's so many different things that happen. The one thing you said, the face mask by Bolton on the fumble, it wasn't a face mask because unfortunately, if Hurts wasn't wearing a visor, it would be a face mask, but the visor, stopped that. If you look full time, I'd say that's a no call. It's fine. The whole flag on the end of the play, they didn't call it earlier in the game. So that's where you get that. If you're not going to call it early in the game, you can't really call it. And the referee that called it was at the goal line. He wasn't the referee that was at the line of scrimmage. So
yeah, that was the part that I saw that was very confusing. And he threw it from far away. Yeah. He threw it from far away after the ball was thrown, after the ball went by him. So it wasn't that the penalty affected the play. It's that the play needed to be altered.
Yeah, and for me, I'm not going to blame the penalty. Hey, would I have loved to see Jalen Hurts have the ball with 1:45 or 44 left?
Give him a chance.
You'd love to see that, but we're not going to be a fan base or fans that are going to say that's why we lost, because there were so many different things in this game.
Yep.
That sucked, because the Devontae no catch took him over 5 minutes to finally call it a no catch, because he caught the ball, took 3 steps, and then went to the ground. You would think that it's not a completion of a catch because he was running and then fell to the ground. All right, it is what it is. It sucked because most likely I have confidence that they would have scored a touchdown there. It would have been 20-14 going into half. The Quez Watkins no catch, why he jumped and why he leaped, I don't know. That's another one that's tough, because you would have most likely extended that to another 10-point lead. And it stinks because you looked how aggressive they were. And now I know they were on their 32-yard line at a 4th and 2 or 4th and 3, whatever. I was surprised on third and short there. They didn't run the ball. They tried to do a pass and it was a blitz and they ran out and they, underthrew Devontae on the sideline. Yeah. And then of course that led to the punt, which led to Kadarius Toney going all the way down and then scoring again. But I think a lot of it has to do with looking at the way the defense played.
Oh God, it was awful.
They weren't able to get a pass rush. Now I know the field was a little bit of issue there, but the way I also have to see it too is both teams had a play on the field, so you can't save the field. The other thing is, I saw a stat that Eagles on 38% of the pressures they slipped, and the Chiefs 14%. So either somebody in the Eagles didn't have the right footwear or didn't know the right footwear to give the players for good enough traction. That stinks, especially on that grand of stage and that big of stage. But there's so many different things in that game. They ultimately weren't able to secure a victory that was right there in their hands, in their grasp, that they should have been able to get a stop on Mahomes. A play that was run twice and you just get completely beat. And it's just, you're not getting home on the pass rush, yet you're playing in this zone type of defense. And it was tough because they just weren't able to really do anything defensively. And and that's where I look at this game and I look at, if they didn't call that penalty and Hurts had the ball and the Eagles went down and scored, I think Sirianni goes for 2.
And ends it. Yeah, sure.
And tries to end it. That would have been an all-time great Super Bowl, don't get me wrong, but of course you didn't get that. But I will give all credit to the Chiefs. The Chiefs,
the Chiefs won that game.
They came out in the second half with
adjustments and made the right things. However, and again, and I love that Adam just commented, I'm glad the Gannon is gone. For all of the defending that we have done for Jonathan Gannon, his glaring weakness came out in the biggest moments. The absolute refusing to make adjustments. The sticks defense, the not pressuring. And yeah, they tried to pressure with their 4-man front like they've done all season. But for them to get the 2 touchdowns on those half motion plays. Okay, it happens once. Fine, right? They run the half motion in. Darius Slay turns his back. He motions back out. He throws an easy touchdown pass. Okay, that's a great play design. That happens once. It happened again. It was the exact same play on the other side. So there was no adjustments being made. You had a hobbled Patrick Mahomes. Guess what? He ran all over this team. You have... I'm so glad that Gannon is gone. I am so glad. Not because I don't think that he was... I know. Not because I don't think that he's a good coordinator, because I do think he's a good coordinator. But I think that his biggest weaknesses shined at the worst time. And the Chiefs made adjustments. And that's when you start going into the other excuses of the field and the officiating and the fix was in. And all. That's when you get into all that.
Yeah.
But this defense was not able to play the way they've been playing. And then when they were starting to struggle, there were no adjustments being made. For the Chiefs to have as rough of a first half as they did, and they were on the ropes. There is no denying that we walked into halftime very confident. For them to get a first down on every single drive, for them to they scored every drive in the second half, right?
I believe so.
For them to score every it's an abomination. And here's the thing. Patrick Mahomes didn't play that great.
Yeah.
His completion numbers were fine. His yardage was low. He ran a little bit. It should have been the second time in NFL history that the MVP was from a losing team, because there is no doubt that Jalen Hurts was the best player on that field the other night. And here's the last thing I'm going to say before I Johnny, because I can see you're itching here. If you remember back to week 1, week 2, week 3, one of the biggest issues that this Eagles team had is that they were very one-dimensional, which was Jalen Hurts makes up 80 to 85 to 90% of your offense. And it worked in the regular season, but it wasn't sustainable. So for them to go back to that game plan where Jalen Hurts ran the ball, 14, 15 times, for him to throw the ball over 30 times, you eradicated Miles Sanders. You barely used Scott. You barely used Gainwell. You barely used Goddard. So it was either throw the ball to Devontae Smith, throw the ball to A.J. Brown, or run. That was your entire offense. And it wasn't good enough.
Well, they did, utilize Goddard. Goddard had 6 catches for 60 yards. He had
How many in the first half, though?
Yeah, the first half. But, Gainwell had 4 catches for 20 yards, but he only had 7 rushes for 21 yards. They weren't able to get much push and run the ball. That was the tough part. But again, they were trying to utilize the Chiefs secondary, and they were doing that. They were moving.
And they played great, by the way. The Chiefs secondary played well. Their line played well. I mean, Jalen Hurts was on the run the whole game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was tough. Don't get me wrong, it was tough. But the thing about it was the game was there to be had, and
yes,
unfortunately, it was a tough game for Miles Sanders. I don't expect him to be back because
I don't either.
I feel in the playoffs, Kenny Gainwell really stepped up. They used Boston Scott. They'll add either a rookie back or a veteran back. That's not going to cost you that much. There's decision stuff they have to be made, unfortunately. And unfortunately, you're going to see, this was the last games on some of these players, the last games that they're going to play as a Philadelphia Eagle. We don't know the likes of Jason Kelsey, what he is going to do. He is, in fact, under contract. He can come back and play. He does have a cap number, everything. They don't have to re-sign him, anything like that. Brandon Graham, he's another one. Of course, you have all these free agents, which we'll detail in the coming weeks, sooner rather than later. But when you look at this game and look at everything that was in front of them, especially going into the half, 24-14,
yeah,
it was tough because against a team and a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, you can't settle for field goals. You need to score touchdowns, and that's why the Quez Watkins drop was so big. That stuff like that is tough. That's why the Devontae they call it a no catch then, was tough because it led to you having to kick a field goal instead of potentially getting that 7 points at half. So stuff like that is tough because when the defense is struggling like that, Jalen Hurts has to put the team on his back and score, and he was doing that. And all the criticisms and everything that he's had early in the season and what he's done this season, and on the biggest stage, the grandest stage, he had his best game of his career.
Yeah.
Tied Super Bowl record of 3 touchdown rushes with Terrell Davis, over 300 yards, and over 100 passer rating. He had a hell of a Super Bowl game.
But he was it. But he was it. And that's where I struggle. Like, again, you mentioned that, Gainwell had 7 carries. Miles Sanders had 7 carries. Boston Scott had 3 carries. Jalen Hurts had 15 carries and 38 passes.
But if you take the quarterback sneaks, which were 3 or 4 of them?
Sure.
Okay, so he has 11. They weren't running the ball very well. And that was the tough one.
They weren't doing anything well.
Because the Chiefs were playing close to the line of scrimmage, doing some run blitzes. They were doing a lot of different things and playing a lot closer to the line of scrimmage, which means opened up the middle, opened up the passing game for Hurts, and he was able to attack that. And the thing about it is, it showed you, and it showed us, we've known it all season, watching him as a quarterback, as a passer, and his game has evolved so much that he's able to do that. He's able to, beat a team with his arm. He doesn't have to be fully reliant on a run game. That if a run game's not working, he can go ahead and dial up the pass game. And it's why, there should be some confidence in this team, because you have your quarterback of the future who's going to be getting a big extension. You have 2 wide receivers in Devontae and AJ Brown. You have a young tight end. You still have a good offensive line, even if Kelsey retires. There's a lot to like, even on the defensive side of the ball. You have some young players. There's some players you have to re-sign and stuff, but there's a lot to like when you look at this team and what they did on the biggest stage. And I think what was great was what Jalen said was, it's either you win or you learn. And he goes,
yep.
And another thing was, you take what you will out of this game and you learn from it, or you don't. But he says, I know what I'll do. He's going to learn from it. He's going to take it. He's going to use that to make himself even better and take him to that next level. That next level. Sorry.
No, and you're right. And I think Jalen Hurts. I think one thing I really respect about this team is that they really have said all the right things the whole way through. I mean, look, this loss is going to be tough to stomach, and I think that if Jason Kelsey retires, that's going to be part of the reason why. Because losing to your brother, making it the whole family affair. I mean, as a center, you don't necessarily want to be the centerpiece of a storyline, but that's what ended up happening. So I do feel like if Kelsey decides to retire, that's going to be a big part of it. It's going to be a tough loss because, like you mentioned, Johnny, so many of these players, this was their last game as an Eagle. It's going to be tough to bounce back. Now we got 2 coordinators that we have to replace. Well, technically 1 at this point because we already have the first coordinator to replace. But I think that this team is still saying all the right things. They're like, yeah, both teams had to play on the field, but it hurt us more the way we played the game. Yeah, you know what? It was a hold. Okay, but the part underneath is, but they didn't call it all game. But they didn't talk. They didn't throw anybody under the bus. You have Quez Watkins going, I took a step back this year. Question is, are you going to make the necessary adjustments? I know Jalen Hurts is about to get paid, but the other thing he said is he goes, I'm about winning. So if that means he takes $45 million a year instead of $50 million a year, I think Jalen Hurts is the kind of guy that would do that. To leave that money out there for another playmaker to help his team win.
Listen, there's so many different things they can do. Takes a big deal. They spread it out over a long time. And that's what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. They gave him a big deal. They spread it out. And, what they can do with Jalen is make his 23 cap hit and his 24 cap hit not as big. And then it gets bigger over that time to be able to bring some of these guys back. These talented players that you had this year, to be able to kind of run it back as much as you can.
Sure.
Because the schedule next year is going to get tougher. It's not going to be easier. So, it's just going to be it's going to be a tough test. But again, this is the type of quarterback, the type of leader that we've seen all year long, that he likes the challenges. He wants to get better. He wants his team to get better. No, and I relish it. I can't wait to see him sign the extension. I can't wait to see him, and I want to put it to you like this, like watching him over the last couple of years. I've always been, the guy, even when a lot of people are like, I don't think he's going to be that type of quarterback. He may be just your average middle of the pack, in the top 20 type of quarterback. I
can't wait for Chris Sims' new rankings.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I can't wait. I was always behind him, I think he's the type of player that, I don't know, especially if he gets a Super Bowl, but right now you're looking at him down the road. I think he's going to have an impact and a type of love that we've seen with guys like Brian Dawkins and like Jason Kelsey and like Brandon Graham. I think he's going to mold himself into that. Now he's already kind of starting to start that just because of his attitude, his work ethic. That's what this city loves. They love guys that are going in and day out, and they want to win, and they want to put every single ounce of effort in there to be at the top of their game and to win football games for the city.
And that's all we ever ask for from our players. So I think the thing with Jalen Hurts that I'm so happy about is last offseason compared to this offseason, when the offseason started, and we'll go back 2 offseasons. So when the offseason started 2 years ago, and we knew Carson Wentz was being moved on, we had a laundry list of questions for Jalen Hurts. Well, going into last offseason, we hadn't answered very many of them. There are no questions anymore. Jalen Hurts is the quarterback of the future. He led this team to a Super Bowl in his second season, like his second full season. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He is the future of this team. And if you look at some of look, Nick Foles is going to retire an Eagle at some point. I'll sign a 1-day contract, and that's a good feel. But he's not like he's kind of like a lore guy. Like he's going to go down in Eagles lore. Jalen Hurts is going to be more. He's going to be more loved than McNabb ever was. He's going to be more loved than Vic was, because you're talking about divisive fan base with Vic. You're talking about the guy who never got the job done with McNabb and was never accountable for it. He's going to be more loved than Randall, who, again, went and had his successes elsewhere. He's going to be more loved than, you name the quarterback. Jalen Hurts will go down on the current trajectory as the best and most popular quarterback in Philadelphia Eagles history, because he understands the mentality of what it means to be in Philadelphia.
No, you're right. And, it just...
on the current trajectory. Now, he could go a different way. I don't see it happening because, look, one of the cool thing about the Super Bowl is you get a lot of people doing the storylines and the talking, and you got to see him and the way he was talking in his interviews and talking with his dad right next to him and the way his dad talked. I don't think that Jalen Hurts is the kind of guy who would go on that prima donna mentality. I don't think he's the kind of guy that he would throw his team under the bus. I don't think that he would choose to go play in, some bumble city just for the more dollars. I honestly feel like Jalen Hurts is the kind of guy that could do, 12, 13, 14, 15 years in Philadelphia and play his whole career here.
Yeah, and I hope so. He's just that type of player that, I don't know. I just see him on the field and what he does, and you just almost have that. We haven't seen a leader like that behind center in a long time.
I can't think of one that we've ever had. To that level, who do you got?
To that level, maybe not, but I know Nick Foles was good at leading. He led the team to a Super Bowl win. So,
sure. But remember, he didn't necessarily. He willed that team to a Super Bowl win, but he was not the unquestioned leader, because if he was, he would have been the one under center at the start of the next season.
No, he wasn't, and I don't think we have an unquestioned leader type of player that takes a stranglehold over a team, and he's only 24 years old.
Oh my God, I love it.
He's like a veteran. He's not. He's not a 28, 29, 30-year-old player that's coming in. Hopefully you can get 4 or 5 years out of him. He's a 24-year-old player, and his game is just getting better and better. I never saw this type of leap that he was going to have. And I don't know. It's absolutely awesome to see, because we know what we have, and the questions are answered. It's just going in the next season and just keep doing what he was doing and doing what he's doing. And, I want to kind of transition this from the Super Bowl talk to, what we're going to see in terms of the offseason. And the Eagles lost both of their offense and defensive coordinator. Both their coordinators are gone.
Which is funny because just 2 weeks ago, we were like, there's a good chance we're going to bring them both back.
Yep. But the Colts and the Cardinals waited and waited and waited and pounced on both coordinators for the Eagles. The Colts getting Shane Steichen and the Arizona Cardinals getting Jonathan Gannon. So you lose both of those guys. And, the early word here is that Brian Johnson, the quarterback's coach, will be the new offensive coordinator.
I love that move.
He was an offensive coordinator at Florida. He has ties with Jalen Hurts. Him and Jalen Hurts are extremely close. So,
I love this move. So let's talk about the leaving first, right? Shane Steichen leaving. I mean, look, he's a very good coordinator. He is a very good coordinator. And as Nick Sirianni kind of turned the play calling over to Steichen, you kind of got to see Steichen really cue into what his players do well. But what it comes down to with that is, will the players execute? And you saw historic numbers for this offense. But a lot of that was because Jalen Hurts was leading the offense and everything was kind of lining up right. So Shane Steichen, yeah, it's a loss, 100%. But I think between Jeff Stoutland still being there, I think the consistency of Brian Johnson just elevating to the next level, I don't see the offense having a huge drop-off because, again, Nick Sirianni is still going to have a hand in that ring. He's going to make sure that offensively we are dominant. I am so glad. And Johnny, I feel like you and I disagree on this a little bit because you have always been a Jonathan Gannon supporter.
Well, I wouldn't say supporter. I was more of
defender.
A wait and see, and then, good season. And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden it's like,
And here's the thing. There was a couple of weeks ago when, Jonathan Gannon had one of his dog crap games where everyone was like, oh, you got to fire him. And I never wanted to fire him. I didn't think that firing him was ever the answer. What I did think is that he had to make adjustments. And again, as I've said all show, he had his failures shining brightest at the worst possible moments. He did not put this defense in position to succeed. He didn't make adjustments. He didn't do what he needed to do. So you know what? His pass rush wasn't working. So what did he need to do? He had to pin his tail back, but instead he kept sending the blitz, creating huge lanes. His players weren't doing the right. His defense was not prepared. For them to give up the points that they gave up in the second half, right? The first two rounds of a match, you're kind of feeling yourself out. And yeah, his defense held them to 14 points in the first half. And then they imploded. They absolutely imploded between missing tackles, between not being prepared, between running the same scheme over and over again. And that's where I feel like Jonathan Gannon is the bigger scapegoat of the two coordinators, because even with all of that, Steichen was able to lead the team to putting 35 points on the board. Jonathan Gannon allowed 38 points in a Super Bowl, the most ever.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Gannon's gone. I think that Arizona did the right thing and hired a defensive-minded guy. They're going to need a very strong offensive coordinator to get something out of Kyler Murray. But I don't care. Jonathan Gannon can go. I have no idea who they replace him with because it seemed to me that Vic Fangio would be the easy replacement. I feel like we're going to have a very different defense in the next season, but I don't see the offense changing that much.
No, I don't think the offense is going to change all that much. I think Brian Johnson comes and brings, some new ideas and everything like that, which is always good to see. Year after year, you want to kind of evolve a little bit the offense. But defensively, hey, the Gannon's basically passive type of defense is a frustrating defense to watch. Yeah, they had 70 sacks, but
which was amazing. You also had players who were legendary. I mean, you have a defense with a front line of Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, and Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. You had Josh Sweat. You had Hassan Reddick. You had defensive studs. So you better have gotten all those sacks.
Yeah.
You better have gotten all those sacks.
It was tough because of certain things and how the matchups and everything, what they did. Yeah, Vic Fangio is in Miami. He signed his deal with Miami, so that's a no there. There are some names out there. I know the in-house option would be Denard Wilson. He's kind of a guy that people are saying, again, I don't know. But looking at outside guys that I know some people have mentioned, I know some people said Lovie Smith. I just don't think that's an option. Looking a little bit into that, but no. Jim
Lovie
Leonard
Smith
from Wisconsin. I wouldn't be. I would like that, but again, he's a college guy. Sean Desai he was the former Bears defensive coordinator a couple of years ago. Was with Seattle. He's got some Vic Fangio tendencies, if you want to call it that. The other one is what I saw today was Vance Joseph, potentially, who was the defensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals, and before that was the head coach of the Denver Broncos. No, Adam, I don't think Brian Dawkins is going to come and coach. I don't think that is what he wants to do.
Adam, he's saying he wants Adam to come play safety because you finally saw, but just backing up to the Super Bowl again. In what universe do you think solo matching up Travis Kelce against Avonte Maddox, who's battling a toe, against Marcus Epps was a good idea? The first half, Travis Kelce absolutely dominated in single coverage. In what universe is single coverage against Travis Kelce the right idea?
No, it's not. You don't want to do that. And again, that leads to you want a defense. Do we want a defensive coordinator that's going to be uber aggressive? I think one guy what you would like is a defensive coordinator that's going to come in, is going to set their tone or whatever it is. I'd like to see more man-to-man. I understand Jonathan Gannon's scheme was play the safeties back and let everything come in front of you. But when you're playing an elite quarterback, they're just going to dink and dunk their way down the field until they score. And
you have to give different looks.
Yeah, no,
and they didn't give different looks at a whole Super Bowl. And this season of all seasons, if you're talking about playing more man defense, you had two stellar corners where man defense would have worked. Darius Slay and James Bradbury are two stellar corners in this league. You don't think they could have handled man?
Yeah. It's frustrating. And again, I don't know what, calls defensively were made, but when you have a play that is executed twice and they're wide open, that's
no adjustment.
Not only just the players. If you're not adjusting and calling different things, the players have to make certain plays. I get that. But when you have certain plays and they're absolutely wide open because I don't know what you're running, it's frustrating. And all the zone defense they played, I know that they play a lot of zone, but again, it was a struggle to watch that second half because when they scored and got that 2-point conversion to tie it up, looking and thinking about the defense, I thought, I don't see them stopping them. And they didn't. And that's where you get to that point where, hey, of course, you may have some struggles next year because of the talent you're playing. But let's get a defensive coordinator that's going to give you a little bit of a different looks, is going to try to confuse the quarterbacks, is going to, throw some things out there, is going to be aggressive. I want that kind of motto, the aggressive motto when he looks at the defensive coordinator.
You and I were spoiled, and I feel like a lot of our listeners and a lot of our fans are of the same problem where we grew up with a Jim Johnson defense. We grew up with legendary players at all three levels at the same time. That Eagles team that Jim Johnson used to run with Dawkins in the backfield, with Trotter in the middle, and your Hugh Douglases and all those guys on the line, that team should have been better. Your Troy Vincents, your Bobby Taylors. The defense was stacked, and Jim Johnson knew how to manipulate them. So I feel like we are definitely spoiled when it comes to that. I need whoever our defensive coordinator is to be the reincarnation of Jimmy Johnson. So I don't care if we have to roll out his casket. I don't care if he's got a third grandson out in Minneapolis somewhere that wants to come down. I don't care if he's a 14th cousin of Bobby Boucher and the Water Boy puts on a headset next fall. I don't care. I need somebody with the Jimmy Johnson mentality to bring this defense. And I don't even want to say back into the glory. Gannon did a great job this season for the most part, but his weaknesses are what sunk this team. I need someone to continue making Hassan Reddick a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I need Darius Slay to continue being everything that he is. I need Bradbury to want to come back. I need CJ Gardner-Johnson to come back. I need these players. I need TJ Edwards to keep developing. I need Jordan Davis to become Fletcher Cox 2.0. I need, Derek Barnett, if they bring him back, to be, I don't know, not whatever he's been. If you notice, there weren't a lot of penalties on like late hits on the quarterback this season. And also, Derek Barnett didn't play a whole lot this season. I don't know if the two of them like matched up at all. And maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe we're more disciplined now, but I do think that's worth discussing one time this week.
No, I get that, but unfortunately he will be back because the way his deal is in Derek Barnett. So I know some other names that were out there, which I know Gerard Mayo from the Patriots, which I would love that, but I think
interesting because he's running pretty good defense up there.
He signed a new contract with.
Well, he won't be for us then.
The New England Patriots.
I think Johnny Higgins again. We talked about Lovie Smith, a couple seconds ago. I think that Lovie Smith should still be the coach in Houston because, you look at their record. Their record is absolutely abysmal, but they came out and played every single week. So you know what? Give me a guy like Lovie Smith. Give me a guy that's going to prepare his team to play regardless of the record. Give me that guy.
Yeah, and again, I don't know who's available. I don't know what they're going to do. There's a lot of names out there.
Rex Ryan apparently is a top candidate for the Broncos defensive coordinator job.
Yeah, well, let him.
I don't want that. I do not want Rex Ryan.
The other thing is you also have to watch and look at the assistant coaches that the Eagles have because of Steichen and Gannon being in new teams about poaching some of the either linebackers coaches or other different coaches that the Eagles are going to have to fill. So again, this is a fluid situation. Steichen did say Gus Bradley will be his DC, so that's going to be a no there.
I'm fine with that. I wanted him back when he was going to be a head coach, and we chose Chip Kelly. I'm okay that he's not.
But again, we'll see who they get. That's of course a name on what they're going to do. But
as far as coaching goes, can we just talk about real quick? And this stat came out, and I'm on ML Football, and this is My Sports Update posted this. I think it's a pretty cool time to be, a part of the Eagles organization because of the longevity. All 5 head coaches that were hired this cycle are something to do with the Eagles. Frank Reich was our offensive coordinator. Shane Steichen was an offensive coordinator for us. Gannon was a defensive coordinator for us. DeMeco Ryans was a player for us. And Sean Payton was the quarterback's coach from 97 to 98. So I always thought that was really, really cool.
That's very interesting. No, that is very interesting.
Johnny, did you not know that one?
No, I saw it earlier.
Oh, well,
but it is interesting. And, it shows you, Jeffrey Lurie was involved in every one of those players and or coaches. So no, it's interesting. There's a lot of off-season talk that we will be getting into this upcoming off-season venture journey. Free agency, like I said, is a month away. So we're going to be getting into, of course, free agency options, different things, the Eagles free agents. We're going to be getting into any other news that happens in the coming weeks. Of course, you have the draft, the combine, all that stuff coming up as well. Eagles have 2 first-round picks. So there's a lot going on. And, we're going to be here like we always are hopefully Wednesday night. It may change depending, but usually every Wednesday night to bring you all the news. And also, hey, in 2 months, I believe a little over 2 months, the schedule release too. So we're going to see where the Eagles play and who they play when. So there's a lot of stuff coming up. So definitely stay tuned. Definitely subscribe, follow us, get all your updates because we'll be here as always.
Word.
But with that, I guess you say a very happy,
a melancholy and,
a very suspect and very Go Birds.
You know what? Much like James Bradbury, we're just holding it together here. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.